It was just another rainy afternoon in a small-town diner, until a quiet man rolled in with his son in a wheelchair, and everything changed. A spilled meal, a small act of kindness, and a stranger who left behind more than just a tip. What started as an ordinary shift would soon become a life-altering journey no one saw coming. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and like the video, and tell us where you're watching from. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Now, let's jump into the story. It was the kind of rain that didn't just fall. It poured. Steady, cold, and heavy, it soaked everything it touched. People rushed inside for warmth, shaking umbrellas and stomping boots, their voices rising above the patter on the windows. Inside the corner diner, the air was thick with the smell of coffee, fried eggs, and stories people didn't speak aloud. Lena stood behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, her feet aching from hours on the floor. She was 24, small-town raised, and carrying more on her shoulders than most people twice her age. Between her part-time job, caring for her sick mother, and the nursing school dreams she'd put on hold, Lena moved through life with quiet grit and a tired smile. The diner was crowded that day. Customers filled every booth, the noise a mix of laughter, clinking plates, and old country tunes humming from the radio. Lena poured coffee, refilled ketchup bottles, and pretended not to worry about rent, prescriptions, and how long her mom's last round of pills would last. Then the door opened again, and a gust of wind slipped in with a man and a boy. They didn't make a scene, no grand entrance, but something about them made Lena pause. The man was tall, with eyes that looked like they had seen too much. He moved carefully, one hand guiding a wheelchair, the other gently patting the boy's small shoulder. The boy couldn't have been more than 7, pale cheeks, thin frame, hands gripping the armrests tightly. His eyes darted around the room, unsure and quiet. He didn't speak, he didn't smile, he just watched. Lena noticed right away how uncomfortable they looked. The tables were all too tight, the spaces narrow. As the man tried to maneuver the wheelchair near a booth, a plate from another table wobbled and crashed to the floor. A few heads turned. Someone whispered. Others just looked away. The kind of moment that makes the air heavy. Lena didn't think. She just moved. She stepped out from behind the counter and crossed the room. Crouching beside the boy, she offered a gentle smile. "Hey there, I'm Lena. What's your name?" The boy blinked. It took a moment. Then, barely a whisper, he said, "Elliot." Lena reached into the front pocket of her apron and pulled out a tiny green dinosaur, worn but still smiling. "I always keep this little guy for brave kids," she said. "You look like one of them." For a split second, Elliot's lips twitched into something close to a smile. His father, still quiet, watched, wary but not unkind. "Don't worry about the menu," Lena told him. "I'll bring something soft and warm for Elliot, something he'll like." The man nodded. His voice, when it came, was low. "Thank you." She brought over mashed potatoes, scrambled eggs, and a milkshake with a small smile drawn on the side of the glass. She fed Elliot slowly, pausing when he needed time, speaking gently, never rushing. Between bites, she asked him about his favorite animals, favorite colors, anything to pull him out of his shell. Every now and then, he answered. Sometimes, just a look was enough. His father, Marcus, she later learned, said little. But the way he watched her, there was something in his eyes. Not attraction, not discomfort, something like surprise, like he wasn't used to people treating his son like a person. When the meal was done, Lena gently wiped Elliot's hands and tucked a napkin across his lap. It was nothing fancy, just kindness. The rain hadn't stopped outside, and the world still looked gray. But inside the diner, for a moment, it felt different. Like maybe things could change, even just a little. When Marcus asked for the bill, Lena only charged for one meal. He tried to argue. She shook her head. "You two made my day," she said simply. He paused, then pulled a $100 bill from his wallet and placed it under the empty milkshake glass. Before she could say anything, he slipped a small card onto the table. Just a number, no name. "You made my son smile," he said quietly. "That's worth more than a meal." Before Lena could protest, he was already wheeling Elliot toward the door. She stood there, holding the bill and the card, heart pounding. Outside, they disappeared into the rain, as quietly as they had come. She didn't know who they were or what had just happened, but something about the moment felt heavy with meaning. Like maybe, just maybe, it was the start of something bigger. Lena finished her shift, packed up leftovers for her mom, and walked home in the drizzle. That night, she sat by her mother's bedside, fed her warm soup, and slipped the card into her apron pocket. She didn't know it yet, but her whole life had just changed. 3 days passed. The rain stopped, the streets dried up, and the world carried on like it always did. Lena kept working long shifts at the diner, kept worrying about bills, and kept that small card with no name in the front pocket of her apron. She hadn't told anyone about the man and his son, not her coworkers, not her mother. It felt like something she wanted to keep to herself, like a fragile secret that would lose its magic if spoken out loud. Then, one afternoon, just as the lunch rush was winding down, the bell above the door chimed, and there they were, Marcus and Elliot. Elliot looked brighter somehow. He wore a yellow jacket that seemed too big for his small frame, and he clutched the green dinosaur Lena had given him days ago. Marcus looked the same, tired eyes, calm face, but there was something softer about him now, something easier. Lena didn't say anything right away. She just smiled and waved them over to the same booth near the window. This time, she cleared a path for the wheelchair, making sure they could settle in without trouble. "Welcome back," she said gently, pouring them water. "I was hoping you'd come by again." Marcus nodded. Elliot asked if we could. Elliot gave a small nod too, eyes on the toy in his hands. Lena didn't need to ask what they wanted. She remembered what Elliot had liked: mashed potatoes, scrambled eggs, and that milkshake with the smiley face. She brought it all over without a word, then knelt beside the boy. "I've got a new trick for you," she whispered. From her apron, she pulled out a folded napkin and quickly turned it into a little paper bird. Elliot reached out and took it, smiling in that quiet way of his. Not big or loud, but real. They spent the meal like that. Quiet, simple, full of small kindnesses. Lena talked to Elliot, asked him about colors and cartoons, and even got a small laugh when she made the milkshake talk like a robot. Marcus watched. Not with suspicion this time, with curiosity. After the plates were cleared and Elliot leaned sleepily against the booth, Marcus looked at Lena. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She nodded. "Why did you help us that day?" Lena shrugged. "I guess because someone should have, and I thought, if my mom were out there, needing help, I'd want someone to step in." He was quiet for a while. "How is your mother?" he asked finally. Lena blinked, surprised by the question. "She's holding on. Medication's expensive. Some days are better than others." Marcus tapped the edge of the table. "You mentioned nursing school the other day." "Yeah," she said, trying to laugh. "Big dreams, small wallet." He looked down, then reached into his coat and pulled out a new card. This one had his full name on it. Marcus Taylor, founder and CEO of a company Lena had only ever heard about on the news. Tech, software, something big and complicated. She stared at the card, her throat suddenly dry. "You're him?" He nodded once. "I don't usually share that, but I wanted you to know I wasn't offering something I couldn't back up." Lena set the card down slowly. "Offering what exactly?" "I want to pay for your mother's treatment," Marcus said, his voice even. "Not as charity, not out of guilt, as a thank you for what you did for Elliot." Lena's chest tightened. She didn't know what to say. That's a lot," she whispered. "I can't accept that. I'm not looking for handouts." "I know," Marcus said. "I could tell from the moment you gave Elliot that toy. You weren't doing it for attention. You were just being kind." Lena stared at the table. Everything in her told her to say no, to be proud, to walk away. But then she thought of her mother, coughing in their small apartment. She thought of the hospital bills, the long nights, the choices between medicine and groceries. "Can I think about it?" Marcus nodded. "Of course." He looked down at Elliot, now fast asleep in the booth. "He hasn't smiled like that in a long time," he said softly. "He doesn't trust many people, but he trusts you." Lena looked at the boy, her heart pulling in a way she didn't expect. Something deep inside her shifted. After they left, Lena stood behind the counter for a long time, staring at that second card. Her hands were shaking a little. That night, her phone rang. The hospital. Her mother's condition had worsened. Treatment couldn't wait any longer. Lena sat in silence, holding the phone in one hand and Marcus's card in the other. Pride and fear warred inside her. But gratitude whispered something different. Maybe this wasn't a handout. Maybe it was a bridge. As the sky turned dark outside her window, Lena picked up the phone and dialed the number. Lena had never seen a house like that before. Wide stone steps, tall windows, and a front door so heavy she couldn't open it with one hand. She stood on the porch, suitcase by her side, heart racing. It didn't feel real. Marcus had asked her to move in, not just as Elliot's caregiver, but as part of their lives. He offered her a place to stay, a chance to go back to nursing school, and full support for her mother's treatment. The offer still echoed in her mind. "You helped my son when you had nothing to gain," Marcus had said. "Let me help you now." So she said yes, but stepping inside that house felt like stepping into a different world. The ceilings were high, the halls were quiet, and everything smelled like polished wood and fresh flowers. People in uniforms nodded as she passed. Some smiled, others didn't. They looked at her like she didn't quite belong. Lena kept her head down. She wasn't here for luxury. She was here for Elliot. He greeted her with a quiet smile and a tight hug. He held the green dinosaur in one hand and didn't let go of her other hand for the rest of the evening. That alone made her feel like she'd made the right choice. The days were long. Lena woke early, helped Elliot with morning routines, and spent the rest of the day making sure he was comfortable, active, and happy. She worked with therapists, prepared his meals, played with him, and read to him before bed. When he slept, she studied. She had enrolled in night classes for her nursing degree. It wasn't easy. Some nights her eyes stung from lack of sleep. Other nights her hands shook from exhaustion. There were times she cried in the shower so no one would hear. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. For her mother, who was finally receiving treatment. For Elliot, who trusted her more than anyone else. And for herself, the girl who once worked long diner shifts and dared to dream of more. Marcus kept his distance at first. He was always polite, always grateful, but he gave H. Slowly, they began to talk more. He asked about her classes, her childhood, the books she liked, the food she missed. He listened. Really listened. They weren't friends, not at first, but over time, they became something close. Two people, connected by an unlikely moment, trying to build something steady from it. It wasn't always smooth. Some of the house staff whispered. They didn't understand why Lena, the girl from the diner, was now living under the same roof. Some questioned her presence. Others doubted her abilities. Mrs. Langley, the head housekeeper, was different. She had kind eyes and a quiet voice. One evening, as Lena folded laundry, Mrs. Langley sat beside her and said, "You're doing better than you think." Lena didn't answer, but the words stayed with her. As weeks turned into months, Elliot changed. He laughed more. He asked questions. He played without fear. His body grew stronger, and his voice louder. He began to call Lena my nurse, even though she wasn't licensed yet. Marcus noticed. "I haven't seen him this happy in years," he told her one evening. "Thank you." Lena shook her head. "I'm just doing what anyone would." Marcus looked at her then. No, not everyone would. Most wouldn't. He then shared an idea, something personal. He wanted to build a care center for children like Elliot, not just a clinic, a place where they could feel safe, understood, and respected. He asked Lena if she'd help him design it. "You know what matters most," he said. "You see people." The idea felt huge, but Lena nodded. "I'll help," she said. The project began. Sketches, meetings, calls. Between caregiving and classes, Lena threw herself into planning. It gave her purpose. It gave her strength. She still missed the diner sometimes, the smell of toast, the hum of the coffee machine. But now, her days were filled with something more. Something lasting. One evening, after Elliot had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Lena sat at her desk, reviewing class notes. Marcus stepped in, holding 2 mugs of tea. "For the nurse in training," he said with a small smile. She laughed, took the cup, and whispered, "Almost there." She wasn't sure what the future would bring, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to imagine it. She was building something, a new life, a stronger self. And it all started with a smile and a spilled plate. With winter, and finally full again with spring. Time moved forward, and so did Lena. She was no longer the quiet girl behind the counter in a small-town diner. She was now a nurse, fully certified, proud, exhausted, but more alive than she'd ever been. The day she walked across the stage to receive her degree, Marcus and Elliot sat in the front row, clapping louder than anyone else. Lena's mother, now stronger after months of proper treatment, wiped tears from her eyes. That night, back at the house, Lena stood in the hallway, her nursing certificate in one hand and a soft smile on her face. Elliot ran up to her, laughing, and wrapped his arms around her legs. "Nurse Lena," he said, "you did it!" Those words meant more than any diploma ever could. But the journey wasn't just about a degree. It was about everything she'd become along the way. With her schooling complete, Lena took on more responsibility. The care center that Marcus dreamed of, now real plans on paper, had become her mission too. They worked side by side, meeting with architects, speaking with specialists, and shaping a place that would give children like Elliot not just care, but hope. Marcus decided to name the center after Lena's mother. When he told her, Lena had no words, just quiet gratitude and the feeling that all the pieces of her life were finally coming together. But not everything was easy. At a formal dinner hosted by Marcus's business partners, Lena found herself in a room full of polished suits and sharp smiles. The kind of crowd where people speak in riddles and measure others with glances. One guest leaned over, glanced at Lena, and said under his breath, "Wasn't she just a waitress?" The words stung, sharp and cold. Before Lena could react, Marcus stood up. The room fell silent. "Lena," he said clearly, is the reason my son smiles again. She gave us hope when we had none. She worked hard, gave more than she had, and earned everything you see here. She deserves your respect." No one spoke after that, and Lena, for the first time in a long time, felt seen for who she truly was. Not just for where she came from, but for who she had become. As the care center broke ground, Lena visited the site often. She watched children like Elliot play in open spaces, laugh in the sun, and receive care in a place that felt like home. She spoke to parents, listened to their fears, and shared her story whenever it helped someone else believe in their own strength. Marcus and Lena remained close, not because of circumstances, but because they'd built something real through shared trust, hard work, and quiet moments that didn't need explaining. One afternoon, Lena stood near the entrance of the nearly completed care center. She looked at the sign above the door, simple, clear, and named after her mother. Behind her, Elliot ran in circles, chasing butterflies, stronger than he'd ever been. She remembered everything: the rainy afternoon at the diner, the spilled food, the shy boy in a wheelchair, the tired man with eyes full of weight, the tiny green dinosaur in her apron pocket. It all began with that moment, that one act. Sometimes life doesn't give you a warning. It doesn't come with flashing signs or perfect timing. It just drops something in your path, a choice, a chance, a quiet opportunity too. And what you do with that moment, it matters. For Lena, it meant stepping out from behind a counter. For Marcus, it meant trusting a stranger. For Elliot, it meant finding a smile again. One small act, that's all it took to start a chain of change. As the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across the grass, Lena turned toward the camera. Her voice was calm, honest. "Life gives us so many chances to walk away," she said, "to mind our own business, to stay quiet. But sometimes, when you choose to step in, even just a little, it changes everything." She paused. What if you're that moment for someone else? What if your small act becomes the start of something they'll never forget? She looked off toward Elliot and smiled. You never know whose world you might change, but you have to be willing to try.